Sabr is not about being passive. It is about being patient and trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. Being patient and practicing this attribute as a matter of high character and high goodness, and having that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. So when we face difficulty, sabr becomes a bridge that takes us from adversity toward victory, however you may define it. So the reminder for me that is good, I want to keep in mind is, when I'm being patient, I'm not just waiting. Let me repeat that. When I'm being patient, I'm not just waiting. Indeed, I should keep in mind I am growing in status. Keeping in mind that if I practice patience, I promise I'll become more patient. Keeping in mind, if I become more patient, my faith gets stronger. Keeping in mind, the more stronger my faith grows and my patience grows, I am becoming closer to the divine attribute of the As-Sabur and hopefully getting into his realm of rahmah and compassion. Keeping that background in mind, brothers and sisters, let's look at quickly a few categories of sabr that will distinguish the practice of this attribute. So sabr begins with patience in obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commandments. I perform my prayer, my fasting, all of the commandments. I do those with patience, expectation of reward, practicing the highest possible standards. Then there is sabr in abstaining from the forbidden. I am steadfast and patient in avoiding sin, in temptation, in mistakes. And then the third category, which we generally tend to think of when we think of sabr, that is being patient during difficult times and tribulation. Illness, loss, hardship, death. All of those being patient. Yet those first two categories are also important for me to keep in mind. So I remind myself. Patience, sabr, in obeying Allah's command. Patience and sabr in abstaining from the forbidden. And patience and sabr during difficult times and testing. The understanding being that the rewards of sabr are high, and then the benefits that come from patience are tremendous. There is an inner peace and tranquility immediately that comes with sabr. With the understanding that, yes, I have faith in Allah, and then I am being subjected to this, and I need to be patient. There is a closer relationship to Allah. And I'm repeating a few of what I've said. But the closer relationship to Allah coming from the increasing sabr, the increasing faith, closeness to Allah. Greater rewards, inshallah, in the hereafter. Greater faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. And the improved emotional, mental well-being that comes from practicing sabr. And we see increasingly this focus on the instability that comes from mental issues and the lack of tranquility and inner peace. And here is one of the avenues that is given to us on a regular basis. Yes, we face stress. Yes, we face hardship, difficulties, tension at work, at home, elsewhere. We're told, practice this attribute that is drawn upon the divine attribute of the infinitely patient one. And the examples of sabr, we all are aware, but very quickly, let me just run through that. The Prophet ﷺ, remarkable example of being patient with his initial community of believers. Patient during the 13 years of persecution in Mecca, facing physical, emotional, other torture, but doing so with the understanding that this is part of the test of Allah and part of the growth of the faith and growth of the community. The prior prophets showed this in high measure to Ayyub alayhi salam, remaining patient despite losing his family, his health and his wealth, and saying to Allah, verily I am in a state of affliction, Ya Allah, and you are the most merciful of all. Drawing upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah and compassion, indicating whatever you expose me to, it is acceptable to me, with patience and faith. Yusuf alayhi salam, patiently enduring his imprisonment and separation from his family for years, once again trusting in Allah's strength. Salama patiently endured the loss of her husband and son in the time in Mecca, later became a source of guidance and wisdom for the community. The Prophet ﷺ should look up to her. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu faced all of the difficulties and then gave up what he had as he accompanied his beloved Prophet ﷺ during the migration to Medina. So, my dear brothers and sisters, we continuously then pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for patience in times of difficulty and for guidance toward righteousness, so that our patience becomes a source of strength and inspiration for us and for others around us. And cultivating sabr, I use that word very carefully as a directive to myself. It's not just a matter of saying, I'll be patient. It takes cultivation. It takes preparation and understanding of the powers of sabr, and how do I plant that as a seed within me, and how do I nurture it and make it blossom into a strong tree with deep roots and spread out branches and flowers. So cultivating sabr is important, beginning with faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, concentrating on what I have been given as blessings and what I can control, rather than giving into the despair of uncertainty. Seeking the collaboration and support of others, and this is an important reminder. Patience is not just practiced by myself. I need to look to others for guidance and input and support, and it's a network that becomes stronger by meshing together. And the practice of self-reflection. Last khutbah when I was here, I addressed that as a reminder to myself. The constant assessment of where I have been, what have I done, and what do I need to do to correct my action. That becomes a part of my patience, because it tells me, have I been patient truly? Have I been nurturing that plant of sabr over the past year, or the past month, or the past weeks, and today, and what am I planning for tomorrow? And constantly looking to Allah for guidance. In the 2 minutes or so that I have left, brothers and sisters, I want to make that connection between sabr and tawakkul, because these are very interconnected concepts, and I have already brought that up in some of what I've talked about. So sabr, patience in the face of difficulties and challenges. And based on what? Trust in Allah's wisdom and plan, based on accepting Allah's decree. So there is that tawakkul. And what is tawakkul? Trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and control over all affairs. Reliance on Allah alone for guidance and support. And surrendering to Allah's will, knowing He's the best planner, while keeping in mind the patience that I'm expected to use. So that the relationship between sabr and tawakkul, foundation and action. Tawakkul is the foundation, and sabr becomes the action. We trust in Allah, tawakkul, and then we patiently endure what Allah gives our way, and that is the sabr. Trust leads to patience. When we trust in Allah's plan, tawakkul, we are more likely to be patient, so our sabr grows. Patience strengthens trust. As I practice sabr, my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grows stronger. And it is that combination together, sabr and tawakkul, that they bring inner peace and tranquility, knowing that Allah is totally in control. And the verses of the Quran are replete about tawakkul. And when you have decided, then rely upon Allah. And put your trust in Allah. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَيَتَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Put your trust in Allah if you are believers in Him. Patience, sabr being half of faith, and here we are told, if you have faith, put tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That linkage. Whoever puts trust in Allah, He will suffice him. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And the Prophet ﷺ, and I end with this, reminded us repeatedly. Whoever trusts in Allah, He will suffice him, he said. He also said, tawakkul is half of faith. Sabr half of faith, tawakkul half of faith, the interconnection, we need to keep in mind both of them. And the one who trusts in Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will never be disappointing them. And all of the stories that we hear, the inspiring examples of sabr, they have the basis in tawakkul. The reminder, for instance, when Ibrahim alayhi salam went through the test and tribulation of the sacrifice, yes, he did it with patience, but he did it with absolute tawakkul and faith that this would lead to the best, even as he held that sharp knife to the throat of his son. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivered by telling him, you succeeded. So, my dear brothers and sisters, today then I know I have touched upon a number of factors. Please forgive me. But I felt it is important to be reminded that this is a tremendously simple yet tremendously comprehensive aspect of our faith. This focus on sabr and the divinely guided attributes that we need to keep in mind. And then the interplay between sabr and tawakkul. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the hidayah to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times and patient when we face challenges and hardship of any kind. May we be strengthened in our tawakkul so that both our sabr and tawakkul grow, and that inshallah we become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and deserving of His compassion and His rahmah and His forgiveness, and ultimately entry into Jannah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen wa akhir da'wan and alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, ya ma'ashar al-Muslimin, qala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala al-nabi, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin bi'adadi man salla wa sa'a. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin bi'adadi man qa'ada wa qa'a. اللهم صل على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى سائر الصحابة وخلفاء الراشدين والتابعين وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين، خصوصا في غزة وغزة وفلسطين وفي كل مكان. اللهم قوي إيمانهم وثبت أقدامهم وانصرهم على عدوهم. اللهم ألف بين قلوبنا وأصلح ذات بيننا واجعلنا إخوة في سبيلك. اللهم فرج كروب المسلمين وعمر روات المسلمين واستر عورات المسلمين. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر. أقيموا الصلاة. As you come up and form the lines, inshallah we keep in mind that